This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey. Here are your headlines. China sanctions Nancy Pelosi over her visit to Taiwan as Beijing continues its military drills off the coast of the self-ruled island. 3 more ships carrying tons of corn are cleared to leave Ukrainian ports, while President Zelensky slams a report by Amnesty International accusing his forces of endangering civilians. In the Netherlands, an extremely dry summer has forced the government to advise citizens, including food producers, to restrict their water usage.
Tensions are at their highest in decades in East Asia, as China launched precision missile strikes off the coast of Taiwan on Thursday, 5 of which landed in Japan's territorial waters. Beijing's military activity was prompted by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taipei this week and have been condemned by Taiwan, Japan, and the U.S.
China has chosen to overreact and use the speaker's visit as a pretext to increase provocative military activity in and around the Taiwan Strait. We will not seek, nor do we want, a crisis. At the same time, we will not be deterred from operating in the seas and the skies of the Western Pacific, consistent with international law, as we have for decades, supporting Taiwan and defending a free and open Indo-Pacific.
While the U.S. has not said it will intervene, Washington will keep naval ships on station in the area to monitor the situation. The U.S. law requires the government to treat threats to Taiwan, including blockades, as matters of grave concern. Pelosi became the highest-ranking U.S. official in 25 years to visit self-ruled Taiwan, which Beijing sees as a breakaway province to be annexed by force if necessary. Speaking in Tokyo on the last leg of her Asia trip, Pelosi said Beijing will not isolate Taiwan by preventing U.S. officials from visiting.
The first shipment of grain from Ukraine anchored in the Bosphorus Strait. The Razoni arrived in Istanbul on Wednesday, where a joint civilian inspection team spent 3 hours checking the cargo and crew of the Sierra Leone flagship. It's carrying more than 26,000 tons of corn, bound for Tripoli in Lebanon, as part of a UN-brokered deal aimed at easing the global food and fertilizer shortage. And the UN says the agreement has already helped stabilize markets.
The negotiations that led to the agreements reached in Istanbul last month progressively had an impact on global markets, bringing the prices of food and fertilizer products down close to levels they had before the war, levels that were already substantially high.
3 more ships carrying grain are expected to set sail from Ukrainian ports today, with Kyiv saying other vessels are loaded and waiting permission to leave. Meanwhile, the Razoni shipment is on its way to Lebanon, where it's expected to arrive on Sunday morning.
Viktor Orban received raucous applause from U.S. conservative politicians during a speech at a conference in Texas. The Hungarian premier said conservatives around the world needed to coordinate to take back political institutions. It comes as he faces accusations of racism at home for railing against Europe for becoming a mixed-race society. Rescue workers in northern Mexico are racing to save 10 miners who are trapped in a collapsed and flooded coal mine. The miners are trapped between 2 60-meter-deep mine shafts that are more than halfway flooded with water. A team of more than 92 military personnel is working with specialists, dogs, and scuba divers to pump out the water and get the men to safety. Government workers in parts of Iraq were given the day off on Thursday as temperatures soared to above 50 degrees Celsius in some areas. The extreme temperatures in one of the world's hottest countries caused power outages in many cities and towns. The heat wave has been ongoing since mid-July and is expected to continue.
A judge in the United States has ruled that actor Kevin Spacey must pay close to €30 million to the makers of the House of Cards TV series to make up for losses incurred when he was sacked for allegedly sexually harassing crew members. The ruling confirms a decision by a private arbitrator last year in favour of the production companies. The jury has ordered right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to pay just under €4 million in compensatory damages for claiming the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax. The verdict follows a 2-week trial in Austin, Texas, where his InfoWars webcast is based. The case was brought against him by Scarlett Lewis and Neil Heslin, parents of a 6-year-old boy who was one of the 20 children who died in the incident, along with 6 teachers. They said his followers had harassed them and sent them death threats, saying they were lying about their son's death, and had asked for almost €150 million in compensation for defamation and infliction of emotional distress. It's the first time the InfoWars host has been held financially liable for his claims that the attack was staged in the interests of increasing gun controls.
The Biden administration is under mounting pressure to negotiate the release of basketball star Brittany Griner after she was handed a punishing 9-year sentence by a Russian court for drug possession and smuggling. The U.S. president called the sentence unacceptable and pushed for a prisoner exchange between Washington and Moscow. Her lawyer has promised to appeal.
To be honest, we're very surprised. We believe that, of course, such a sentence does not correspond to what was committed. Moreover, it's absolutely contrary to the existing judicial practice under this article, taking into account the amount of substance, taking into account the admission of guilt. Of course we will appeal. We will file an appeal. We certainly disagree.
Griner has been detained in Russia since February after authorities in Moscow found cannabis oil in her luggage. She admitted guilt, but said it was an honest mistake.
U.S. citizen athlete Brittany Griner, who is admired by millions of fans in the United States as well as here in Russia, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for nothing more than an intentional oversight. This is a miscarriage of justice. Secretary of State Blinken, President Biden's national security team, and the entire American government remain committed to bringing Ms. Griner home safely to her family, friends, and loved ones.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has proposed a high-stakes prisoner swap, which could see Griner and another American prisoner return home. Moscow says the deal should be discussed with quiet diplomacy, without releases of speculative information.
The Netherlands has imposed an increased warning level due to the water shortage. As a precautionary measure, a crisis team has been given the task of regulating the distribution of water reserves, should such measures become necessary. But that could be the case if the drought continues.
Drinking water is not at risk. I want to emphasize that. The drinking water supplies make sure 24/7 that the supply is in order. But what I do want to ask everybody to do is to use water sparingly. At this moment, shipping and agriculture are most affected. You can imagine that the rivers contain less water, so ships can carry less cargo and sail less. That is what it comes down to.
Take the IJssel, for example. The river cuts through the Netherlands from Gelderland to the Ketelmeer.
Normally the water level in the river IJssel is so high that we'll be standing in water right now. Behind me, as you can see, the inlet is dry, so the pumps can no longer take in water.
Farmland must be irrigated or there will be crop failures. But in some areas of the Netherlands, water use has been restricted, even in crop production.
The crop we are watering now are seed onions. We need to keep them growing and generate income, but this is not the solution for the future.
The Netherlands is a water country, said Minister of Infrastructure and Water Management, Mark Harbers. Nevertheless, everyone must save, he demanded. For the time being, for example, people should refrain from washing their cars, Harbers says.